open the pod bay doors.
Greetings and welcome to the Cinematic Traveler Podcast. I am your intrepid movie exploring host, Chris, and on this episode, I am going to bring you my review for the big holiday film starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, simply entitled Red One. But before I do, let me bring you a word from the sponsor of this episode. That would be yours truly. And if you could, whatever you're listening to this podcast on, if you could please subscribe, follow, give me a nice review, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, if you can find me on my one social media platform that I'm going to use. So I'm going to make it easy for you, although it is a long name. It is at Cinematic Traveler Pod on Instagram. That is where you can get in touch with me. You can follow me and keep up with my amazing, amazing life as a podcasting warrior. Now that I have gotten that self-promotion out of the way, let me ask you before we dive into this episode, how are you doing, my beloved listener? I know that we are starting off the week because I'm going to release this either Sunday night or early Monday morning, so you're heading back into the workforce, but hopefully this episode will give you a little break from reality, maybe give you a few laughs along the way, and definitely give you the best review of Red One out there. As for me, I am just super excited to be out here talking to you about this movie, as well as podcasting again. It seems I am on a break from my other podcast, Just Go Watch, because there's been a little inconsistency with the release dates between here and England, where my co-hosts are. So the movies are coming out at different times, so I can't really be on a few of these episodes. So Just go watch and listen to the guys as they put together their work. I won't be on it, but I will be on it coming up, I think, the next weekend, which will be for the movie Wicked, which I am really not looking forward to. But anyway, let's go ahead and dive into our review for this film, which is, like I said, entitled Red One, which is a really horrible, horrible title for a movie. And by the way, if in real life you have a red one, perhaps you should go visit the doctor and maybe get a prescription of penicillin or something, or maybe some cream or something that will help you get rid of that. So before we dive in, I am going to give you a very spoiler-free plot review and film review for that matter. I'm not going to give away anything in the movie that hasn't been given away by the trailers, which does give away a lot, so I've got a lot of wiggle room right there. And also, if you haven't listened to my very first episode where I explain the rules of this podcast, I will let you know that during my plot synopsis, and my plot synopsis only, I am going to use two movie quotes. And if you can identify which movie those movie quotes are from, just get in touch with me, as I mentioned on Instagram, at Cinematic Traveler Pod. You can't miss it. It's the one with an astronaut with popcorn face. But anyway, and just DM me and let me know what movies they're from, and I will keep track. And you get a point for everyone you get right. And at the end of the month, I will give the winner their option of what movie I should review, and I'll do a special fan-led review for all of you out there. How exciting! I'm excited, although I'm a little bit worried about some of the stuff I might get asked to review. So anyway, listen carefully. I will tell you that the quotes are from movies that are sort of related to what this film is. This is a holiday movie, so these will be holiday film quotes. One of them's pretty easy. The other one, that one could be tough. So good luck. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into our plot review. As we open Red One, we are introduced to a young boy, Jack, who is proving to his cousins that Santa is fake and Christmas is nothing but a scam. We then flash forward 30 years and we catch up with the adult version of Jack, played by Chris Evans, who is now a bounty hunter type person. He finds people through the internet, and that's how he makes his money. He gets paid. He's kind of a criminal, or right on the edge of being a criminal. And he claims that he can find anyone in the world. He has been hired by a mysterious organization to find someone or something in the North Pole. This leads us to our Santa Claus of the movie, played by J.K. Simmons, who is gearing up for Christmas Eve. Now, he is constantly followed by the head of his security, Cal, played by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who is ending his long, illustrious career as Santa's head of security with this Christmas. This is his last Christmas he's going to do it. While Cal, he sort of has lost his belief in the joy of Christmas, but he is very proud of the work that he does for Santa, so he really wants to go out on a high note. But as we all know, life does have a way of throwing us a curveball when we make plans. Well, life is like that. Sometimes at the height of our revelries, when our joy is at its zenith, when all is most right with the world, the most unthinkable disasters descend upon us. And that's what happens to Cal, as Santa is kidnapped from the North Pole just a few days before the one day Santa actually gets off his ass and does some work, taking credit for what the parents have to go through, fighting crowds and staying up all night putting these damn toys together, and then waking up to those ungrateful brats who only complain about what they didn't get. Sorry about that. I went off on a little bit of a tangent there. I apologize. Back to the plot here. So Cal tracks down Jack and enlists him to help find Santa before our villain Gryla, played by Kiernan Shipka, finally does what Santa has only threatened to do over the centuries. She's going to punish all that are on the naughty list. So basically, we're all screwed at that point. If she wins, we're all in trouble. So will our heroes be too late to save Santa, and Christmas will be a complete disaster, or will they defeat Gryla, ensuring that we're gonna have the happiest Christmas since Bing Crosby tap danced with Danny fucking Kaye? Well, I will not answer that question in this podcast, but I will give you the best review of Red One and all the podcasting and all the universe. Let's just go ahead and say all of the universe. Okay, so moving into our review, I will let you know I do break my reviews down into 3 segments: the good, the bad, and the nitpicky. The good are the things that I liked about the movie. The bad, obviously, things that I didn't. And the nitpicky are really neither things that are good nor bad, just little maybe Hollywoodisms or just silly things that I see in these movies that make me laugh, and I'm hopefully going to make you laugh with some of these observations. Give me a few episodes to get some of the rust off from when I used to do this before. Just bear with me. But all right, diving into the good of Red One. Starting off, I did like this world that they have created around Santa Claus. It's almost like he's got this presidential team around him constantly with like I said, Cal, the Rock Johnson. He's sort of his head of security, head of the Secret Service or whatever, and they're always following him, making sure they know where his moves are. And even into the world of the North Pole, they all have these little jobs they do in divisions and different groups that are in charge of all these different areas. So I like the way they built it. It's a little different take on what you would usually see from Santa Claus. There's also this agency, I forget, they have an acronym, but there's sort of an agency of mythical creatures that works with Santa Claus, so they give him like fighter jet escorts when he's flying around and all kind of stuff. But I sort of like that sort of world that they built with this. They don't explore it as much as I'd like to, and we'll get to that later. But it does take an interesting twist on the Santa Claus mythos, as it were. Plus, you get a very different version of Santa Claus here. He's not the fat, jolly guy, although he does love his job. He's sort of an action hero. You see a little bit of that at the end with J.K. Simmons. But again, I think it's a really interesting idea concept for a different take on Santa Claus and his world. They also have some pretty cool gadgets they do. The sleigh that he takes and the reindeer are giant reindeers, and they move like light speed. They have all these portals that travel through toy stores and stuff. And The Rock has this armband that he wears that he can turn toys into like life-size actual things that work and stuff like that. So I enjoyed all of that concept of the movie. And while this is a heavily bloated CGI movie, there is a moment in the movie, and this is in the trailer, I double-checked beforehand, where they travel to see the Krampus. And that is very practical. They have like a man in a suit for Krampus, and I really enjoyed that as a fan of that. I think that whole scene was really cool looking, although I think one of the masks, one of the characters looked like it was used in a Star Trek show or movie. I couldn't place it, but it looked very familiar to me. So they might be repurposing some of these costumes. But I enjoyed actually that reality in this unreal world, if that makes any sense. Because once they start going back to the CGI, that's the only bad thing when you do practical like that. It's kind of jarring when it switches back to the CGI because you're like, oh man, you were doing so good with the practical stuff. But I'm going to give the movie credit. for having some really cool practical creature designs, especially the Krampus. I thought he looked great. My final positive of this movie is, I mean, it's got J.K. Simmons in it, and he's one of my favorite actors. He's great in everything, and as I mentioned, I liked his version of this Santa Claus. And let's be honest, you can never have enough J.K. Simmons. I mean, God, the guy's in like insurance commercials, and I won't turn the channel just because he's in the insurance commercials. But that kind of wraps up my positives of this movie, which should probably tell you where we're going to end up on my final verdict. But all right, let's move into the bad or the negative of the movie. Let's just follow off on our J.K. Simmons love with the fact that this movie hardly has J.K. Simmons in it. He does get kidnapped because he is Santa Claus. So through a large portion of the movie, you don't have him in there. That's just a waste of such a talented actor. So that might be a small nitpick on my side. But damn it, if you got J.K. Simmons in your movie, use him. The guy, even in this movie, and I will criticize a lot of things about it, even he is bringing a good performance as Santa Claus. I want to see more of his Santa Claus. They can make sequels of that, and I will be there. But as far as the rest of the cast, that's where the movie gets a bit rocky. No pun intended. We'll start with Chris Evans. He's okay here. I will say I'll give his performance a little credit in that he does react to these weird mythological things that he is seeing in an appropriate way. He gets scared. He jumps out of his skin a couple times, and he does that whole fish out of water thing very well. So I'll give him that. He has a few laughs here and there. But I will say I don't know what accent he was using, but it was everywhere in this movie. Some scenes he had it, some scenes he didn't. It's just kind of a I don't know. He doesn't have much to work with, and that really comes across here. There are some points in the movie where he's just basically Captain America again. I mean, he fights this apartment with all these agents in it. I'm like, why? How does he know how to kick all their asses and stuff like that? Am I just supposed to believe it because he was Captain America? Again, there's not much for him to do, and it just comes across that he really is trying his hardest, but there's just nothing in the script for him to do. There's this little tacked on thing with he has a strange kid that he doesn't see for years or doesn't see a lot or something like that. And they try to get some emotion out of that, but it's so minor in the movie and it's just like they show it and then it's gone and then they bring it back at the end so you'll have a tear or something at the end. Yeah, it was kind of cheap. But, really ultimately, I think the worst part of his performance is that him and Dwayne The Rock Johnson, they just didn't have any chemistry. And I could not figure out why. I like Chris Evans. I think he's a good actor. And for Dwayne The Rock Johnson, which we'll pivot to here, this felt like going into the movie when I was like, okay, I know what this is going to be. It felt like a kind of movie where he would be good at this movie, where he could be kind of goofy and have some fun with this role and this sort of outlandish character that he is playing. But he plays it so damn dead serious that it was just, there's no fun in his character. There's no charisma. And I know he's got charisma. I've watched, I mean, he wouldn't be a big star if he didn't. And there's so many movies that he's done where it's just his charm and his charisma has kept you captivated in the movie. Not here. He's just boring. And him and Chris Evans, they got a few scenes here and there, but nothing really clicks with the two of them. Feels like sometimes they're in totally different movies. Like I said, I think because Dwayne is just not having any fun here, it looks like. He's just playing it so straight. I'm like, dude, it's a Christmas movie about Santa Claus getting kidnapped. It's okay to let go and have some fun. I know everybody compares him to Arnold, but I think Arnold in his prime would have had a blast with this movie, and he would have brought all of his charm and one-liners to it. It would have been more fun. I actually was sitting in the movie thinking about people I thought would have worked better if we'd have stuck, say, with Chris Evans. And I know they would have never done this because the Chris power would have been too much to handle. But if they'd have put Chris Hemsworth in The Rock's role, I think that would have worked a hell of a lot better. I think that, obviously him and Chris Evans have that chemistry from the Marvel Universe movies, but I think he would have played it a little more appropriately for what it was. He wouldn't have been quite as serious as The Rock is. I also thought about Idris Elba because I love Idris Elba, and I think he would have brought a little more fun to this as well. Or maybe if they'd have had someone different in the Chris Evans role, maybe it was just they just didn't have that chemistry. I know I've read some behind the scenes stuff that Dwayne was kind of a pain in the ass in this movie, so maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. It just was off for me for The Rock because usually this is the kind of role you would think The Rock would nail. This is just right in his wheelhouse. And he was just boring in the whole movie. He kind of drug it down. Also, I mentioned her earlier, the villain, Gyra, or whatever the hell her name was. She was weak, It kind of felt like a Marvel movie in that regard, where she just had her one motivation. I don't know why she hated Santa Claus. I mean, I get why she did what she did in the movie, but there's nothing behind her. She's just generic villain. And I gotta say, with this podcast, I am going to try my hardest here not to bring up my personal life, but God, Dang, she reminded me of somebody that I used to know. But anyway, yeah, there's really nothing threatening from her, and maybe that's just because you know where the movie's going to go because it's very formulaic. But ultimately, she's just like I said, generic villain. And I know I talked about the world that they built up, and there was stuff that I wish they would have done more with, especially like that agency with all these mythical creatures. That could have been more fun. Or even this thing that Dwayne The Rock Johnson wears on his wrist, where he makes the toys basically come to life. I thought that would have been just awesome throughout the whole movie if they just had different. Because at one point they go through these toy stores, and that's kind of how they move around the world. Which I should give this a little credit for the movie about. Every time they would go to a toy store at one part of the world, it would have this one Christmas song playing, and they would go to another one like in Germany, and the Christmas song would be in German. It would be the same song but in German. So wherever they went, it was in that native language. I thought that was a cool little touch. But anyway, they would go to these toy stores and they would grab a bunch of toys to use later. And you've seen in the commercial where they blow up the car and they use like the Rock'em Sock'em robots and stuff, but they don't really do a lot with that, and it could have been a lot more fun in that regard. Instead, they just kind of use it real quick and then it's gone, and they never use it again. Cal or the Rock, he has like these Ant-Man powers. That's kind of as close as it gets. But other than that, they really don't play around with that, which could have been a lot more fun for the movie. Which it would have been nice for this movie to be fun because damn, it is way too long. I believe it was over 2 hours long, which is a lot. I felt the length and I didn't, it was just me. I don't have kids, or at least my kids are grown up. So the families in there that had little kids, I could hear them, start talking and get bored because they were stretching this movie where nothing's happening. It's more of these characters talking to each other. And I was like, damn, if you'd have cut this out, made it, streamline it, make it just this sort of action adventure fun thing, have the toys popping up that would keep the kids engaged because that's really ultimately who this movie's for. They're trying to get the kids and then have enough in it for you as an adult to watch and be like, okay, this is passable, or at least I'm not completely bored out of my mind. But ultimately, I think this movie just really doesn't have any heart. As I mentioned, it goes too long, but it just doesn't have that Christmassy kind of, that thing you're supposed to feel at the end where, oh, yay, Christmas is coming and we're all happy. Yay, yay, yay. You can tell I'm not a big fan of this time of the year. But, that's usually what these movies are trying to go for. There's some kind of connection where, like Jingle All the Way, since we talked about Arnold earlier, he finds the present and he does all this stuff for his son and is, yay, we're happy. This doesn't really have that. It tries to force it, but it doesn't really feel genuine throughout the movie. All right, so having said enough negative things, let's go ahead and move on to the nitpicky. As I mentioned, these really don't have anything good or bad to do with the movie, just kind of stupid things I see that make me laugh. First thing that makes me laugh, Chris Evans, and this is from me, one Chris to you, another Chris, and obviously we're both awesome because we're Chris's, but that hairpiece, my friend, I don't know what's going on there, but something's up. I don't know if it's the hairpiece or maybe you've had some cosmetic surgery. Something's going on, Chris, that we need to talk about because early on in this movie when you came out, it was very distracting. I almost felt like I was looking at a plastic version of Captain America. So maybe ease back a little bit, man. We can grow old gracefully. That's one of the benefits of being a Chris. You can grow old gracefully. My next nitpick, the movie, there's a point in the movie where Santa Claus and Cal are in a shopping mall. And this place is crowded, and there's kids running everywhere, and parents, and they're all arguing and fighting and all that stuff. And I gotta ask, because I have not been to a shopping mall around Christmas time in I don't know how long. I just order all my stuff on Amazon. But is it get that busy anymore? I mean, where I live now, there are two malls, and one of them it's scary to walk into because it feels like it's about to fall down around you. There's all kind of cracks in the wall and the floor. And the other one I don't want to go to because the first time I went there, there was a active shooter situation. So I have tried to stay as far away from that mall as it is. So I don't know anybody that goes to the mall. I've got kids, as I mentioned, they're grown, but I can't remember the last time any of them said, "Hey, let's go to the mall." So does it get that busy? It felt a little jarring to me. It felt like this movie should have taken place in like the '80s or something. And my last little nitpick for this movie, and this one is just dad to dad here. So any of you dads out there, your kids are driving you crazy and they're like, oh, we want to go see this movie, we want to go see this movie. Let me tell you, most of the time you can just tune off the movie, turn your brain off. You play on your phone, whatever. I will allow you to play on your phone in this movie because as an adult, that's not a big deal in this movie. But I will let you know there's this point in the movie where our heroes end up on a beach, and I want you just really to wake up for that moment because I've seen some quality use of bikinis over the years in films, and this one does do a fine job of that. So for all of you dads out there, at least that'll give you a few minutes in this movie to enjoy the show. And I know that sounds horrible, but it's my podcast. Who cares? So overall, my final rating, and I should have mentioned this earlier, I don't really give a number rating. We do that on Just Go Watch, the other podcast I'm on. But I prefer just to tell you whether to go see the movie in a movie theater or just to stream it or not see it at all. This one is a little bit tricky because it is a holiday movie, and I know a lot of kids are probably going to want to go see it. Again, I think if you've got kids and they're pretty dumb, you could probably enjoy this movie. You could shut your brain off. And I don't want to hear, oh, no, he called my kids dumb. Come on. You got some dumb kids out there. Some of you do. My parents have told me they have dumb kids. But who's behind the microphone right now, podcasting all over the world? Me. So who has the last laugh now, mom and dad? But no, I guess if your kids really were dying to see this movie, you're not going to enjoy it. I will say, as I mentioned, I don't watch reviews for these movies before I do one, but it's hard to stay away from seeing like titles. I know this movie's been getting its ass kicked by a lot of people saying it's horrible, the worst movie ever, it's terrible. It's not really that. It's just dead on average. It's kind of boring. You've seen it a million times. There's a few scenes here and there. So ultimately, I would tell you to skip it, especially at the cost. If you took your kids and had to buy all the popcorn, oh my God, you would be spending hundreds of dollars to go see this movie, and it's not worth that. I did mention that it's was supposed to go on Amazon. I'm sure it'll be on there in a few weeks. So just wait, watch it on streaming. You can put the kids, make a bag of microwavable popcorn or whatever, and just chill out and play on your phone while they watch the movie. That would be about the highest ranking I could give it. I don't think it's that bad that you shouldn't watch it if it comes on, but it feels like one of those where you could, like I said, you could have it on in the background, the kids would enjoy it. You could check out the parts that are exciting or enjoyable and then just kind of tune out for the rest of them, do whatever you want to do around the house. So my ultimate verdict is go ahead and check it out when it comes out on streaming, and you'll watch it and you'll forget about it by the next day. That's sort of how most of these movies are anymore. So ultimately, that's how I feel about Red One. What say you? You can get in touch with me again on Instagram. Cinematic Traveler Pod. Find me. You can let me know what you thought about the movie. Let me know if you figured out where the movie quotes are coming from. I will definitely keep track. You could be the winner and you could pick a movie for me to review. And that's a scary, scary thought for both of us. So, speaking of movies to review, my next episode will be coming out towards the end of the week, and it will be my end of the week streaming surprise. I will be doing a streaming movie or show or who knows what. That's why it's a surprise on my end of the week episode to gear you up for my next movie review. Also, again, as I mentioned, I am on another podcast, Just Go Watch. I haven't been on the last couple because, again, the times these movies are coming out have been a little bit different, but definitely go listen to the show. The other guys do a great job, even when I'm not there. Obviously, when I'm there, it just elevates the show that much. So go check that out. And definitely come back for my next episode. If you go ahead and subscribe to the show, you will get the alert. You will know when it's coming, and you can listen to it. And it will give you a few minutes of peace and joy in this world. So that wraps up this episode of the Cinematic Traveler podcast. As always, I'm grateful for you listening. If you made it this far, then I must have done something right. And I can't wait to talk to you again later in this week. And until I do, I need you to do one thing for me. Go out and do that voodoo that you do so well.